here we are. It is just after 7 a.m. on the morning of day 4. We stayed last night at the Innaminka hotel in Innaminka. It's looking like we're probably going to be here for one more night. Many of the roads through to Birdsville are closed due to flooding from water flowing out of Queensland. So looks like we can't get through to Birdsville today. As you can probably hear, a lot of people here are running generators. Grab some breakfast soon and let's see what the day brings.
Hey everyone, Jason here from Off the Beaten Path. And so a little bit about today's video. We found out last night, as you might have heard on the intro to this, we're stuck in Innaminka while the trip organisers and officials try and find out if we can actually get into Birdsville or not. So we've got an extra day, just basically staying in Innaminka wasn't planned. So we've decided to go out and explore. This is not so much a four-wheel driving video as visiting some of the campsites, a little bit of scouting around Innaminka, and some of the historic sites. So as you can see on the map there, we've got Will's Grave and the Burke Memorial, and then the other area highlighted is the Callymurra Waterholes campground along the Cooper Creek. So initially on the video, we headed north of Innaminka, crossed back over the Cooper Creek over the causeway. There's some lakes up to the northwest. We're going to go up there. That road was closed. So we turned around and came back, checked out some campsites on the north side of the Cooper Creek. If you want to camp close to town, I reckon they're probably the best campsites. They've got long drop toilets. It just means you can't walk up to the pub to get a meal, at least not easily, without probably getting your feet wet if the river's flowing. But they were cracking campsites with better river access, we thought, than the ones on the south side. So there's a heap of campsites really close to the Innaminka Township and Pub Hotel, and you can camp on the river there. They're a few bucks a night. You book them through the hotel. They're certainly a great option, and a lot of people in our group did choose to camp down there. So after checking out the campsites on the north side, we headed west or southwest, out along the Cooper Creek on the road on the south side there. We checked out a lot of the campsites along there. I only showed you one or two of those. And then we went to Will's grave site where Will's passed away. And then we turned around and came back, went past the Innaminka Historic Cemetery, and then out to Burke's Memorial. Now, you will hear me say when I'm there that that's where Burke's buried. That's not where he's buried. He's actually buried in a cemetery in Victoria in Carlton, I believe. He died there and he was buried there for a short time, but they actually moved his remains. So he's not actually buried there, just to be clear. And then from there we headed up to the Callymurra Waterholes campsite, which in my opinion, if you want to camp out of town a little bit and you're self-sufficient, is the best place to camp with the best river access when the Cooper Creek is flowing. Look, hope you guys enjoy this video. As I said, it's not really a four-wheel drive video, but let's get into it. Thanks for watching as always. So as I said in that introduction, we headed north out of Innaminka, back over the Cooper Creek causeway. So this is only about 1.5 kilometres out of town, not far at all. And as you can see, the river looks even more silty than it did yesterday afternoon, because there was more rain last night. So as we cross the Cooper Creek here, access to some campsites is just on the left-hand side here. You can see those fence posts there, and that access was just after that shot cut off. So initially we decided to head out and look to explore up towards the lakes area, northwest of Innaminka, and initially that looked promising. we thought we'd have a nice day trip and a bit of an adventure. The road looked good and in good condition, so we weren't too concerned until we saw that. And that is exactly what you think it is. Yep, road closed sign. So we pulled up just after we passed that because we were moving along at a fair clip, and turned around and headed back. So this is the camping area just over the Cooper Creek, just north of Innaminka. As I said when I had the map up, if you guys head out to this area and you're looking for somewhere to camp close to town, to me this is the best spot. Everybody that wants to camp camps on the south bank, where they can walk up to the hotel. And look, if you want to be able to do that for meals and what have you, by all means do that, but there's long drop toilets and everything over here, and these campsites, in my opinion, actually have better access to the river. You can camp down a little closer to the river than you can on the other side. So for camping close to town with access to the Cooper Creek, these ones along here are my pick. They're really well spaced out, nice and level, so you get a good amount of privacy on each of the camps. And as you can see, there's no one here. There was probably half of our group were camping, as well as other people who were just travelling in the area, half of which were actually waiting also to try and get access into Birdsville. But there was probably 50 people camped at the main campsites just on the other side of the river, and yet no one over here. So you might be able to see some of those vehicles. Just doing that last shot there. So as I said, this video is really not a four-wheel drive video. It's touring around Innaminka, the campsites, and then the significant historical sites to sort of show you a little bit of what's available in the immediate area around Innaminka. And yeah, you can see some people, may or may not be from our group, probably not from our group, because I don't think any of our group had vans, just on the other side of the river there. And that's the end of the camp area. We just turn around and head back. So from there we crossed back over the Cooper Creek and then headed west out of Innaminka. So there's the main camping area right near town, and then as you head west out the main road there's a number of other campsites along there, about 4 or 5. We drove into every single one. I didn't put every single one on the video here, just a couple to give you a bit of an example. One thing to keep in mind when you're looking at this footage is, we're in a four-wheel drive vehicle, moving along at a good clip, and we've got basically a formed road to drive on. Imagine how inhospitable this land was, and there's cattle, which weren't here back in the 1800s. Imagine how inhospitable this was back in the day when the Cooper Creek wasn't as full as what it is now. It didn't have a lot of water in it at all, and this is the landscape that's facing you. And you've got camels as your primary mode of transport, and that's it. Definitely food for thought. And then you think about the First Nations people that lived out here for thousands of years and managed to survive. And not only survive and thrive. So this is fairly typical of the access into some of the camping areas. There's a day use area here, and then a campground access down close to the river just off to the left there. Not sure what the really white sand is that these roads in the camp areas seem to be covered with. It's whatever it is. It's something that they use to put down as sort of a bit of a road base. perhaps to try and stop erosion on the tracks. So that's the day use area, and we're just heading down here. So I think at this particular camp spot there was 2 or 3 campsites down on the river, and again these are so much better than the ones that are closer back to town, and there was no one here. I guess it's just that little bit further out of town, and people are not so willing to travel perhaps. When you start to see a good line of trees like that, you've usually got a fair idea that you're getting close to the river again, because being the main water source out here, that's where the trees tend to be. You will see plenty of stock tracks pretty much everywhere around here. So there's the long drop toilet there on the right hand side. Obviously they've got to be up away from the river, they can't be right on the bank of the river for obvious reasons. So it is worth thinking about that in terms of where you choose your campsite if you need to use the long drop and you haven't got your own facilities. So the first campsite when we come down here is just in there to the right hand side. And again, the access down to the water is protected from vehicles, obviously to prevent erosion and damage to the banks of the river. But you can certainly walk down there and enjoy or try your hand at a spot of fishing, or go for a swim. And this is the other camp spot down the end here. Pretty level, nice and open, and with good access straight to the river. So still heading west from there to the side of Burke Memorial, and again just open desert country, bit of stock out here. Obviously they can't run too many stock on land like this. Despite the fact it's been a bit wet, there's just very little vegetation out here, not very much for the stock to eat at all. The road is barely defined, really. And here we're heading into the site where Wills passed away. So they were actually heading west from the D tree. Burke had made the call that they were headed towards Mount Hopeless, which was a station in South Australia, rather than back towards Menindee Lakes, which is where they had come from. Mount Hopeless was actually closer. They got to this point and Wills was unable to continue any further, and he was left with a cache of food to survive as long as he could. At this point too, they'd lost a few of the camels, and it was clear that they weren't going to be able to make it through to Mount Hopeless, and they turned around and headed back towards the big tree.
So here is the memorial stone commemorating the burial site for William John Wills of the Burke and Wills expedition, and this is the site west of Innaminka where he died after being unable to continue. He was left here with a supply of food by Burke and the other surviving member, and he passed away here on this site prior to his food supply running out. It's ironic, they were camped up at the dig tree for some time, and the local Aboriginal people were actually helping them out and giving them food until their behaviour was such that the local Aboriginal people moved on and left them there.
So heading out from the memorial site there, so just on their behaviour, I read a bit more information further on after recording that. And from what I understand, and look, I don't claim to be any kind of historian, Burke was the one, he actually fired his rifle towards some of the local Aboriginals, and it was that hostile behaviour that led to them no longer helping Burke and Wills. Wills and King, so King was the other member who was still with them at that stage, were actually in favour of befriending the Aboriginal people and getting help from them, and Burke was resistant to that. So Wills passed away at that location. Burke and King headed back east, and they tried to make it back to the Dig Tree. Burke succumbed and passed away prior to making it to the Dig Tree, and King survived because he went and befriended the Aboriginals who remembered him. They looked after him, and he was ultimately found by a subsequent expedition who was trying to find out the fate of Burke and Wills. So there's got to be a lesson in that, I think, for all of us. So heading out of there, that was the first part. There was the Innaminka Historic Cemetery that we went past, and then we jumped back on the bitumen to head around to the eastern side to the Burke Memorial. So we're just on our way there now. Still on the bitumen back on Adventure Way before we're able to turn off and head into the location where Burke passed away, which was also quite close to the Cooper Creek. And that's the turn off right here. It's a relatively short drive in here, just a couple of kilometres. And it's, as you can see there, it's fairly well signposted. Again, not particularly hospitable looking country. And this is the turn off into the Burke Memorial site. If you keep going straight ahead there, that takes you to the Callymurra Waterholes along the Cooper Creek, which we do head back and check out after this. So all these tracks around here are pretty easy going. You could drive them in a two-wheel drive vehicle, really. Certainly at the time we're driving them anyway. Pretty sure I had the pads just in 4 high with no centre locker engaged, so basically all-wheel drive. Just gives you a little bit more traction and stability on a loose gravel surface. Certainly learned a lot more about the Burke and Wills story having done this trip. Vaguely remembered it from many years ago in school, and yeah, it's quite interesting to learn, you know, where they travelled, how they travelled, the decisions they made around what they were going to do, and they had many opportunities that it's always great with the benefit of hindsight, but they had a lot of opportunities where they could have made a different decision, and possibly one or both of them may not have actually passed away. They had to make the best decisions they could at the time, though, of course. But there were so many occasions where they were almost found, almost rescued, right from missing their waiting party by only about 9 hours, apparently, when they got back to the Dig Tree, through to when they were on this journey west. Another rescue party actually went back to the Dig Tree site and didn't see any evidence that they'd been there because they didn't put any additional markings on the tree. So that party stayed there for a few days and then left again. And that happened while these guys were heading west towards Mount Hopeless. So had they stayed there or headed towards Menindee Lakes, they would have been found. But yeah, as always, it's easy to say these things with the benefit of hindsight. We've all been, I'm sure, in situations where we've made what we thought was the best decision at the time, and hindsight would have led you to make a different decision. So this is the walking track, so parking bay here. That's one of the other vehicles on the trip, on the variety trip. So just park here, and it's about a 500-metre walk down there to this memorial.
So here we are now east of Innaminka at the burial site where Robert O'Hara Burke, aka Burke and Wills fame, is buried. So a plaque over here on the tree in memory of Robert O'Hara Burke, leader of the VEE, died of malnutrition, aged 40, 1st of the 7th, 1861. So there's the official memorial over there, and then we've got this plaque here on this tree.
So the story there is apparently he passed away under the tree. He was buried for a time there until his remains were later relocated to a cemetery in Carlton, Victoria, I believe. So from the Burke Memorial there, we headed back out and then turned left and headed into the Callymurra Waterholes. So this is basically a track that goes along the Cooper Creek, and there's a heap of campsites out here. As I think I said in the intro, this, in my opinion, is probably the place to camp, particularly if the Cooper is up and flowing. It's got the best river access, the best campsites. There are long drop toilets out here, so there are those amenities available. You're about probably 20-30 k's out of town here, so not so far that it's inaccessible to get into town if you need supplies, but far enough away that you're really not going to see too many people out here. And again, as I said, there was probably 50 people camping down at the main campsite near town. There was nobody out here. Mark and I actually joked about maybe we should camp out here instead of booking in for another night at the Innaminka Hotel. But we had already extended our stay. There wasn't a lot of vacancies with our group and others in the area, so when we had the opportunity, we did extend our stay for the extra night at the hotel there. And it's a decent run through here. Look, I've left all this footage in here just so for those that are interested, they can watch the whole thing. This track's probably a little less well maintained and a little rougher than some of the others. You would still get an off-road van in here quite okay. As I said, there's been a lot of rain. The track was quite dry and quite firm. And a couple of campsite areas there just closed off. But even with a couple closed, there are plenty more places where you can actually camp all the way along here. We did actually see, I think, one other vehicle from our variety trip head out this way. So while it wasn't the day that we planned to have, it was a good opportunity to learn a little bit more about the area. Quite often on this trip we've passed through places very quickly where it would have been good to spend half a day. Broken Hill, for example, even Silverton, it would have been good to spend maybe half a day looking around those places. That'll be another time. So this is the end here. And actually not quite. Just one of the campsites I've driven into. So I did drive into a few of these. I haven't kept all that in here because it would have been way too long. But you can see campsite just down there, long drop toilet just up here. Again, obviously they've kept them away from the river, and you can see they're raised up a little bit because it is flood prone along here. And this area does keep going. So that's just an example of The type of campsites that you find along here, they're really well separated. They're 50 to 100 metres apart at least. So even if there are other people out here, you're going to feel like you've got your own space. You can see along the side of this track some decent erosion gullies, so obviously when it does rain it does flow fairly well here. And really it's pretty inhospitable country. The reason you would camp out here would be for access to the Cooper Creek. I think it'd be pretty hot and dry in summer if the creek's not up and flowing. Keeping in mind we're out here sort of just at the start of winter. You're probably getting the sense here this goes on for just about forever. Not quite that far, but it does go a long way. Another long drop there. Access on the left down to another campground. And I think where we're coming up to now, this might be the actual end of this track. Sort of as far as it goes. With a last campsite here right at the end. Got one of the channels there on the side, the main Cooper Creek on the left. And what a cracking spot it'd be to camp up here somewhere. So yeah, this is the end of the vehicle access. Now we did, as I said, we drove in to a heap of these and we actually found one just near here that was one of the only
day 4,
ones that had direct
touring
access right
Callymurra
down to the waterholes
along
most of them the banks
the river here
high, sort of up above it.
in Innaminka. It's the Cooper River, and we found this cracking little spot here beside the river to cook up some lunch. And Mark's trying his hand at fishing, so who knows, we might get fish for dinner.
Okay, well, that's the video for today, guys. Look, hope you've enjoyed it, found some good information out of this particular video. Certainly enjoyed putting it together for you. Was a really fun area to explore, and we're glad we got the opportunity and took the time. Shame we didn't get to push on to Birdsville today. Some of you might know what happens in that regard, but I'm going to leave that for the next video for those that don't. So as always, thanks for watching. I hope you've enjoyed it. Please like this video if you liked it. Subscribe to the channel. We really appreciate all our subscribers. And leave a comment down below if you've got any questions. Thanks for watching.